right, well, welcome to another Microvellum Live session where we focus on tips, tricks, and discussions about our software, industry, tools, and technology that help you streamline the way you work. Today, we're going to be talking with Hugh and Will Cumming of Cumming Brothers Pty, a company specializing in custom cabinet making and joinery in Moorabbin, Australia, just outside of Melbourne. We'll learn how they've grown their business using their new Microvellum software, some laser technology, and some new CNC machinery that they've recently put on. We'll also focus on key areas of their workflows using Toolbox, Microvellum's AutoCAD-based manufacturing platform. And later on in the session, we're going to be hearing from Matt Davies, and he's going to give us a quick tour of Toolbox, focusing in on some of those areas that are being used there at Cumming Brothers. If you're already a Microvellum user, what you're going to see should be a little familiar to you. We'll be showing you how to lay out a project in 3D and 2D and produce some of the manufacturing data, but pay a close attention, because what you're going to see is, if you're not using our project costing tools yet, you're going to want to see this feature in action. We'll talk about how it works. We'll walk you through some of the settings and talk about the benefits that Will and Hugh have been experiencing. But before we get started, I just want to remind you that you can ask a question at any time using our Q&A by opening up that Q&A panel here in Zoom, or in the comments area on our YouTube live stream. If we don't get to your question live, we have a few techs helping out behind the scenes just to make sure that we leave no question unanswered. And if you're curious, we are recording today's session, and it will be available on our website at microvellum.com/live. So without any further delay, let's get into it and introduce you to Will and Hugh from Cumming Brothers. Gentlemen, how's it going this morning?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Going good, thanks, Clay. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great to hear. Yeah, thanks again for taking some time out of your morning there to have a chat with us. We also have Matt Davies, who'll be joining in on the conversation and leading the second half of our demonstration, as I mentioned. Thanks for being here, Matt.
Thanks for having us, Clay. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, so Will and Hugh, tell us a little bit about your company, what you do, and the types of products that you build.
So we do like interior fit outs, like all the cabinetry, from kitchens through to wardrobes. Like occasionally we do a little bit of furniture, but most of our work is architecturally spec work. And we've got a Woodtron CNC, a panel saw, and a edge bander, and we've got about 5 guys that work for us.
Nice. So that's what your shop looks like now, but in the early days, that's not quite what it looked like. What was, before you implemented the Woodtron CNC, before the software, what sort of software and maybe equipment did you have driving your production?
So in the beginning, we were just running, we just had the panel saw and the edge bander, and we were just drawing up our jobs in AutoCAD in 2D. And from there, we were basically just manually doing our cutting lists, then sending them or just putting them onto Google Cloud, and we have an iPad at our panel saw, and the boys were just going through the cutting list there. Yeah, I mean, it worked fine, but it had its limitations, and it was there was a fair bit of human error that was happening just with all the data entry.
Right. So I can imagine some of those errors and the things that, maybe the processing delays that you might have had, those were some of the things that drove you to want to look for software. But what really led you to looking for new software, and what motivated you to reach out to Microvellum?
Well, I guess we kind of hit a point where we just felt we couldn't get any further. We were just, doing huge hours, and we just basically hit a brick wall, and we just knew that there had to be a better way of doing things. So yeah, that's when we started looking out there.
Yeah, was the AutoCAD based software something that you were looking for, or is that something that just kind of fit with what you found in Microvellum?
Well, so with the work that we do, it's all very custom, high-end work. So we knew that we just didn't want limitations, basically, and we were comfortable with the whole AutoCAD platform.
And yeah, just after looking at all the softwares out there, Microvellum just sent the obvious choice for us.
Right. Good. So you knew you had to make a change. You wanted to grow beyond that wall that you mentioned, and that you felt you were up against. And I think that's a similar story to a lot of what the companies that we work with. But whether they had software that they were replacing when they switched to our software, or they were in the same boat as you and had limited or no software really driving their design to manufacturing process. But one of the things that you guys did differently, one of the things that I've recently learned, was that you opted to move beyond that wall, focusing on the software first. So what was that process like for you and your team, moving from just the AutoCAD to a cabinet program like Microvellum? Did you find it difficult to make that transition?
Not really. It was pretty smooth for us. I mean, we were already pretty comfortable in AutoCAD, so coming across to Microvellum was pretty easy. And I mean, yeah, we had a couple of little hiccups here and there, but the way it was just impacting our whole workflow far outweighed any issues that we were having. That's for sure. Just right. Projects, just to completion, it was just completely different. Just the whole having every component cut rather than us, leaving little bits off the cutting list and then finding out on site that we don't have parts. That was the big one for us.
Mm-hmm. So did you feel having a background in AutoCAD helped you with the learning curve?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, for us, it only really took like about, after the first week, we felt pretty comfortable, in doing most things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
How much customization did you guys end up doing? Is it using the product library out of the box work for you, or did you end up customizing it for your use there?
So we haven't done a whole lot of library customization.
Mm-hmm.
We basically just, for our basic cabinets, we just do all that. But then when it starts getting into more complicated things, that's where we use the 2D editor.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of, work with curves and all sorts of shapes and things like that. And, little things that would take a day to do beforehand, we can now just, in 15, 20 minutes, we've got it on the factory floor and cut from drawing it. It's completely
mm-hmm.
changed the way we do things.
Yeah, I can imagine. So now you've advanced a bit further. You've moved into the world of CNC manufacturing. What was that transition like? I mean, coming from just the saw and a few other manual machinery.
Yeah.
What was that transition like for your team? And you went with a Woodtron? Is that what you're using? Woodtron nested-based machine?
Yeah, that's what we're using. So we had zero background with CNC. Neither Will and I had worked, or any of the guys that worked with us had worked with CNCs before. But I think, I don't know, I've never really worked on any other CNCs, but with the Woodtron, it's very basic. It just seems to, all the work is done in the software. And by the time that we got our CNC, we pretty much had Microvellum under control. So the transition was pretty smooth. I guess the biggest issue for us was kind of just putting the faith in the whole system, because just loading, drawing up the job and then suddenly sending it to the machine and just watching, 100 sheets getting cut, standing there just thinking, I hope we've done this right, basically.
Yeah, it's definitely a transition from manually cutting it, knowing every cut you're making, to allowing the machine to handle it for you.
Yeah, and that's what I guess we were kind of a little worried. So in the beginning, we're triple checking everything and kind of probably wasting a little bit of time. But once we kind of realized that it all just worked, it was it was huge.
Yeah.
Just what it did for us was massive.
So what else has it done for you? I mean, in terms of growing your business, are you doing maybe more types of work, or other ways that you're using the software and or CNC together to grow?
Yeah, well, so we also do quite a bit of, we do a cutting service now for other cabinet makers in our area. And that's been good. We don't do a whole lot of it, but yeah, we just do enough of it to, keep the machine going. But I guess the main thing for us is just some of the work that we can take on now previously would have been, I mean, we probably would have taken it on, but this would have taken a lot longer to do, and the accuracy wouldn't have been, you know, where we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
So now this kind of feels like any project that comes our way, we can do, and it's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, it's a good confidence to have. So,
Definitely.
Fast forwarding to today, you have the software, you have the CNC, your team is trained, you have 5 people you mentioned, and they're all using your new connected workflows that you've integrated with the software and the CNC machines. And how are you doing when it comes to quoting your projects? I heard that you've recently started using our new project costing tools. What sort of accuracy are you seeing with that, and what exactly are you tracking with it?
Yeah, so we're using it to help with our pricing. So we've kind of customized that a bit, just, you know, to have it running with the whole machine times and our assembly times. And now I'm very confident in it. If there's if there's jobs that are maybe a bit more complex, we'll use that as a starting point, just to get all the materials and just all the basic machining time, and then from there we will add on little bits and pieces if we feel we need to, as far as time and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think it's great. It certainly saves us a lot of time as far as quoting. If we're just doing just a standard kitchen or something like that, works perfectly for us.
Sweet. Well, that's great to hear. And I think that's a good segue perhaps to invite Matt up and to show us how that project costing works. Maybe we can start off in showing you that, Matt. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I'll share my screen here. So what I'm going to do is take you through the estimating, and I'm also going to talk to you about some new functionality that we have now, as well as a little bit of a snippet as to what we know is coming in the next month for this, and so it'll be quite good for everyone to see this. So I'm just going to start a project, and the workflow I'm going to use here is not from drawing. I'm going to use the work list or the product list to draw from. So I'm not going to do much in here. You've probably all seen this information before, but I'm going to start a new room. Don't even need to start a room. I'm just going to go straight to my product list, and I'll start the room in there. So in here, I can add a new room in here into the spreadsheet, call it room 1. And I'm going to start to add some products in. So if you're sitting at your desk with a PDF on your desk from an architect, you may have already put that into AutoCAD or Microvellum to reference. But if you're just working on your desk and you're going through and you're doing an elevation of a kitchen, and you could say, okay, well, yeah, it's got a one-door tall cabinet in it. You're just going to double click. It'll bring that product in. If it has an end panel or a filler on it, you can decide that it has a filler on that product, and the filler's on the left-hand side, left swing door. You can put in basically everything that you want for that product, and it'll come into the work list. So then if it had a fridge cupboard, I would come in and add that to the project. Same thing, it might have a lift-up door in that fridge, and then I want to select what type of Blummer Ventos system it is for that. You can make any changes that you would if you were going to be drawing this product, this job. So I'll put in, might have some drawer banks in there, and let's say it's got some 3 drawer banks in there. And this time I'm going to make them 900 wide, and they might have shadow line finger pulls. You can calculate your drawer front heights as well here if you want, if you're trying to get the accuracy of what the drawer system that's going to be allowing in the quote. And you can change your quantity here to 3. You can also change the quantities in these. So if it had 2 one-door tools, you can just come through and add those in there. So I'll just leave it as those products for now. But once you've got those on the screen, you can actually process directly from here and create a work order. Some of your keys may not have this function, so you may have to go back in to the other way. But here you can select what you want to do, and you can say a work order from selected products, or you can say the entire product list. So if I'm just doing these products, You create the work order as you normally would there, and we hit the process button, and this will take us into our processing station. Okay, so in we go. So here we're now in the processing center. So I have all of my parts in there. For the estimating, you don't need to do any processing to the machine. You can just come straight into your reports. And in your reports, you can come into your quote report here, and you can, print that off or do whatever you want to that. So here's my quote report. Now you notice that in our quote report, we have this set up so it's dynamic, and this can be changed and you can customize this. But this phrase here is dynamic based on what we have selected up the top here. So it's telling me here that your project quote includes the following: supply of all materials and hardware as per the material schedule. Project will be fully assembled, delivered to site and fully installed. So if we were going to be doing this as a flat pack project, as Will's mentioned, he's doing Will and Hugh are doing a bit of that now. So we could say, okay, well, we're not going to install it, we're not going to ship it, we're not going to load and unload it, and we're not going to assemble that. And we just say, okay. And now you'll see here that is now telling me your project includes the following: supply of all materials and hardware as per material schedule, project supplied as flat pack, picked up by customer. Okay, if you're going to ship it to site, you can tick that box and it'll say ship to site and delivered to site. Okay, so a really good feature if you're trying to, customize that sort of thing. In here, we can change our markup, our overhead level, and our tax. And you can also put a markup on finishing as well if there's any finishing in there, like spraying of parts or sanding and things like that. So that's the quote report. Now the cost report, I'll go into the labour report first. So the labour report, as Will mentioned, is where we're giving it the times that it's going to take on the actual machine. So we have an office labour time here. So the way that we work this out is it's just per part. So the more parts in a product, the longer it takes to draw typically. So that's where we're getting that estimate from. Then we have our machining. So we've got our panel lead in and lead out. We have our panel cutting. So this is all of the border routes or border cutting if it's going to a panel saw or a beam saw. Any vertical drilling. If it has horizontal drilling, it will also be listed here. Routing labour, so this is additional routing outside of the borders or on the inside of the part. And then we have our labelling labour. So we've got 191 minutes there on the machine for that, including the labelling. And then we come into the edge banding. So again, we've got how many lineal metres and then the speed that we can do that at. So, and then we have the finishing. So I've got some 40mm stone in that project on those three base cabinets I've got ticked on to allow bench tops in the drawing only. So it's allowing for that bench top in the quote as I brought them through. I've got my Haferley extrusion there. So the finish time that I've got in the bench top material in the material file is dictating the time here. So I'm saying it's 30 minutes per square meter of time that I want to allow for either cutting templates, doing site measures, whatever that is, whatever's required, ordering that from the supplier and getting it and receiving it, getting it to the project. So you can build all that into any of your buyout materials. You can build in a time for finish either per unit, per lineal meter, per square meter, whatever that unit of that part is. So then we have our product assembly. So you have your part handling labour. So this is moving parts around the factory. So Hugh and Will have done some pretty cool time studies on this to dial this in really accurately as to how long it takes them to produce, as well as all of their hardware assembly here. So we've got all the times for screws and legs and the draw systems that you've got. So you can have each hardware item in the material file can have a different hour or different minutes associated to that particular part, and then it'll quantify it by the number. So it's pretty accurate. Then we have our loading and unloading of the truck and installation time. So where that comes from, I'll just go back, and this is where Hugh and Will have done their time studies through their activity stations. So in the activity stations here, And these can be customized and added to. You may need to get some custom report building done if you're wanting to add more process in here so that we can add it to the report for you, but that can be done as a service. But we've got it pretty well broken out anyway, I believe. If you do need more and you want to break it out more, it is possible per part or square meter or however you want to measure. But you'll see here, this is the list of activities that we do through a process of a project. So we have our part cutting. So this is any of those border routes or on the parts, so cutting the outside of the parts, whether it's saw or a CNC edge, a flatbed. So here we've got the units per minute of factory time. So here, how many units I can do in a minute. So it's per lineal meter is the measure. So it's saying here I can do 5 meters per lineal meter is my roughly what I can cut. So that's my average. So Will, do you know what your number is for that offhand? What your panel, what your part cutting factory minute rate has is now?
I actually don't have that on me right now. Sorry, Matt. I'd have to.
That's okay. That's fine. But you've done your time, so you've been out there on your machine and watched that cycle. And
yeah, we've done. Yeah,
measured those, and given that that time in here, and then you have your labour rate. So with each of these activities, you can have a different labour rate. So if you're wanting to charge out your new machine at a different rate to your normal factory, that's fine. You can have it at a different rate. Otherwise, you can just charge it out as at your standard factory rate. So that's up to you how that works. Then we have our panel lead in and lead out. So depending on the method of your cutting, that may be 0 if you're cutting on a saw. You don't really have a lead in and lead out. But you could also put that in there as time if you were going to a saw, because you've still got to get that part and take it over to that. And you could rename that instead of router lead in and lead out. It could just be, you know, moving part or moving sheet on the saw. As long as that number stays the same, you can name this whatever you like and it'll come through onto the report. So here's, we're just saying that the lead in and lead out, we can do 6 lead in and lead outs per minute. So each, so that's basically 12 seconds per part for the machine to lead in and lead out, again, multiplied at that rate. Vertical drilling, so how many, we're saying 10 drill drops per minute here. So if you've got a fairly serious drill head on your machine, that might be 25. And the way that Will and Hugh did this was go out to the machine with a stopwatch and watch the drilling cycle and counted, you know, how many holes. They knew how many holes were on that particular nest pattern, and then they timed that process, and they probably allowed a little bit of extra time on top of that, but that gave them the amount of drill drops that they could do per minute. Routing labor, again, it's the routing sequence. So after the drilling sequence, you can then quantify the routing sequence before it goes into the border sequence coming off the machine if it's going to a nester. And again, same thing, just going out there with a stopwatch and timing how long that takes to route per meter based on your machine. So some machines work faster than others. So this is where you can do some time studies on that and see where you're getting the return on that machine over another machine. If you're looking at buying machinery, it's sometimes a good thing to be able to quantify that and see the difference that you would expect. Same thing for labeling. Part labeling is an interesting one. If you've got trying to do a time study or trying to work out how long you're spending doing labeling, and you're considering buying an auto labeling machine to either bolt onto your existing machine, or you're replacing your CNC with an auto labeling line or an NBC cell, this is where you can actually do some time studies for yourself to see where you're going to get the return on that investment, which is pretty cool to have that functionality. Edge banding, again, same thing, just measuring how many meters you can do in a minute and then putting that into here. Finishing is more labor than hasn't got any sort of parts or anything that it goes through. It's based on a square meter. We don't need any units in here. It comes from the actual material itself. So it doesn't even need the square meters. It just comes from the material, and it's multiplying it by the labor rate of 100 here. So that I'll show you where that is in the material file shortly. Part assembly, same thing, how many parts you can assemble in a minute. So it's saying here it's 6 minutes per part, basically, so 0.2 of a minute, or 5 minutes per part, 0.2 of a minute. So hardware assembly, we don't need any unit in here. It's just a labor rate to calculate it by. Again, the labor value for hardware comes from the material itself. Part handling. So again, this is just moving your parts around the factory. I've lost time basically. So when it's not on the bench, some guys are just zeroing this out and just using the assembly time to calculate everything, which is fine. Just depends if you wanted to break that out. Inspection and packaging. This is just checking your products at the end after they're complete. So how long you would allow for that per product now instead of per part. Loading and unloading, again, you can have how many employees to load and unload the truck. You can have a different labor rate and how many you can put on the truck in a minute. Shipping, we use the shipping as a cubic meter rate. So it's calculating the volume of the products from the height, width and depth. And then we're just giving it 1 unit. And here the labor rate is per cubic meter. So it's $80 a cubic meter is what we're calculating there. So again, that can be changed throughout in any project. If I make a change here, if you were shipping this to a location outside of your standard region, I could change that to 95, hit the update button here and then run that report and it will change my quote, it'll change my labor, it'll change everything to do with the project. So anything in here can be modified on the fly. We've got drafting, again, like I was saying earlier, that's done as 1 minute per part is what we're calculating it. It's pretty accurate if you've got a, you know, you're spending more time than that. So basically it's just your drafting time. How long did it take to draft on average, you know, the last week and how many projects did you get out and how many parts are in each project. That's going to give you what your typical average would be. Whether you want to use that as a for your proposal or your quote, if you want to use that in there. Otherwise you can zero it out and just use your markup to have that, or you can use your overhead to measure that, because obviously it's a difficult thing. Some projects are harder than others and some come with less information, so it takes you longer to gather the correct information from architects or the customer. So yeah, sometimes that may be zeroed out. It's up to you again how you want to use this tool. So that's about setting up your activities. So the changes that we make, anything in that activity station, so that's this button down here, anything that we make, any changes we make on the fly will immediately come through into the report. So if I come into my labor report here, we should see the change from the shipping. If I've got the shipping's actually not in here, it's on the cost report or in my quote report. So you'll see that change if I change any of those that are seen on that report. So with the where we get that information for all of the materials here for hardware and for your material file is done in the material file itself. But before we go there, I'm going to show you and talk about the sneak preview of what's to come. If you're on our latest build, which is available now, it was released on Monday, we can now modify a work order. So this is a really, really nice tool that a lot of customers have been asking for since we pretty much started with the processing center. So in here at the moment, the functionality that we have, we can give the work order a number. We can change its status in here. So pretty much everything we could always do to work orders, but we can do it now from within the work order rather than having to go out and through Toolbox setup and options and going in through the database tools. We can come directly in here and do it, which is really cool. We can, if we had a batch in here, we can delete and rename batches as well. Now, the only function we've got now for materials is that we can edit this material here, say the color board 18 mil, and I can change the quantity that I have on hand. I can change whether it's got graining or not, the size of the sheet, the estimating price, the trailing trim width. So you know, you might have a whole pack of whiteboard in there that your apprentices just put the forklift into the side of it, and you need to make the length trailing width 15 mil so that you can still utilize that product rather than going through and changing the size of it. You can just change the trailing trim and it'll just nest onto that. So this is a really nice feature here. We can also change the name of a material. So if you've come through like this and it's called colorboard 18 mil, and you want to change that colorboard 18 mil and you know, call it red something, red 18, you can change that, and all of the parts on that material will change the name. So again, a really nice feature for on-the-fly changes. So just make it quicker for you guys once you've processed to, you know, don't have to go back to the material file, rename, reprocess, and then send it out to the machine. You can do all that here on the fly. The only thing you won't be able to do is change thickness. Okay, thickness is just too hard. There's too many things involved with thickness changes within the products that we can't make it reflect in here. So as long as the material is the same thickness, you can change the name, which is typically what would happen. So I can also delete selected sheets out and add sheets into there as well. So I can add a sheet. So you can actually add a sheet with the name of that and give it a different size. So if you're doing manual scrap management yourselves and you've got some scrap management on the shelf, you can put in here a quantity of one of the sheets and give it a size, and also an optimization priority here, and then change your optimization priority of the other one here to a 2. That way it'll use this first before it goes and uses that sheet up. So again, a really nice feature for on the fly utilization of offcuts within the project without having to go in and, you know, copy the material and then, or having 2 sheet sizes in the one material in the project. It's just so much faster. So it's really nice. So I mentioned that we might be getting some new functionality. So this being a new tool, we've figured out that we can make this even better. From now we've seen it. So we are going to be having in here the ability to add hardware, to have all of your hardware listed and change the estimating costs for your hardware, the labor values for your hardware. So if you've got, like I had in this report here, some of those hardware items didn't have any value to them because I haven't actually gone into my material file and said, okay, oh, that hinge is $6.85. I've got 0 in there because I've never used it before and whatever. You can go in here, you'll be able to come into here and change the material price for that particular piece of hardware and rerun that report. So if you're seeing any zeros in your report, it's going to be super fast to make those changes, as well as labor values within the materials. And you'll also be able to change the finishing value in this material. If this material here had a finish on it, it will have the finishing value labor in here as well that you'll be able to add. So that's going to be coming in the next month for Microvellum. So keep an eye out for that if you start to play with this modify work order. So just to go back and show you how I got to that. So if you're on the latest build, which is our 20.1.617 build, you'll go up to general and it'll be modify work order. So if you haven't got that button, it's because you're on an older update that doesn't have that. So request for the new update and we'll send that out to you, and you'll be able to modify your work orders, which is pretty cool. So yeah, going back to the material file, so I can show you where some of those values are coming from. If I come into my library spec groups here. So in our hardware items here, if I've got some drawer systems, so Blum drawer system, Allegra box in the white. So any of these items, you can edit those items and it'll have the labor value there. So that's how long it's taking in minutes to assemble that piece of that drawer system. And then you have your estimating cost here. So you've got $66 or $68.80 and it's each item. So yeah, that's all pretty self-explanatory once you do it. If you are doing your whole drawer systems and you want to allow a different value, you can select the whole lot, and you can say edit multiple materials, and then you can edit the that material and edit its labor value and change its labor value on a whole bunch of materials. Okay, you can also change the price for a whole bunch of materials on the fly as well, which is pretty cool. So that's your estimating side for setting up hardware. It's the same for buyout. So in a buyout material, say for example, we had the bench tops, and I was using a stone top, and it was 40 mil stone. So in here, I'm putting in how much on my estimating price per square meter, and I'm putting a labor value per minute, or in minutes per square meter as well onto that, to allow my time that it's going to take to order that and get any information that we need to off to the supplier for that material. That's the same for solid stock and as well for sheet stock. So sheet stock, slightly different. Typically it'll be finish. So if we're editing this material, I had my finish labor set at my finish rate set at 100. And the reason that I've done that is so that in here I can put in how much it is per meter of this material to get the finish put on it. So if it was going out to get sprayed and lacquered, here I'm allowing basically $110 per square meter, rather than saying it's $110 a square meter in the other area. I'm just putting that value into here. That way, for different materials, you can have a different rate. So if it was just getting painted, and it might be that when it's painted, it's $85 a square meter, but when it's a veneer and it's going to be lacquered, then this is $110 a square meter. So sort of just using the, you know, thinking about it, this is a better way to utilize that. So again, it's up to you, test it and see how that works for you guys. Now you will, if you notice when you're doing your cost reports, if you're on the latest library of Microvellum, it'll have the reports built into it. If you're getting any values that are -1 in the materials, it's because that part of the software is not enabled for your company. So request that. If you're an older customer, that will be automatically put on for you, at no charge. Newer companies now, we've got the ability to sell the product without these features, so that it just puts our price point a little better for guys that aren't going to utilize this at the time. But any existing customers that have had the software since before this year will have that function in the software, and if it's not on your key, then we'll get it enabled. So the workflow, I'll just continue on quickly with the workflow. Now we had that project estimated through our product list, so we've got all the products in there. The workflow could be that you now want to draw that. You've won the project and you want to draw that and send it out to the machine. So here, if we're in the project, so I'm in that project, and I've got so it's there. So I'll say new room, I can click on the room one there, it's already in there. Create the template that I want to use, and it'll open up that room. So with that room open now, you'll see here in my product viewer that there's those products that we enabled. So I can then draw some walls if you like. So draw some walls and start to lay out your project. So 700. 5 meters, and then go to your product viewer here, and this one door tool, I can say, okay, I'm going to place that product on a wall to the left hand side, and I'm going to place it down, and it's going to be 18 mil from the corner, and just check what I've done in the estimate. It's all okay, so I hit okay, and it'll draw that, and you'll notice now that it's gone blue in your product viewer, so it knows now that that's been drawn into AutoCAD, and we've got that product in there, so you can make any changes you need to, and any changes that you do make at this point will also reflect in the estimate. So if you needing to go back and just check that you've sold it at the right price and you haven't made too many changes in here, you can just go back and pull the same report. So here I can just say draw now. I can just say place this next to another product and just start laying it out. So this is a really handy tool, or this workflow is really cool if you've got an organization where you've got multiple people and you've got an estimator that's doing one thing. If he's using this tool, it's a really good catch to see that, you know, if he's missed anything. If you're working off the product list that he's created, then you notice that he's missed a whole wall of products, then you can see that. Okay, so I need to copy those across, but yeah, you get the idea. So to get my quantity of 3, you can just keep pushing those out. So that that workflow again is a really good stop to find issues that may have come from somebody missing a whole elevation off a project. You'll catch it at this point, and then you can go and highlight that fact. And it happens all the time. You see it. You see companies that'll be doing multiple levels or multiple rooms in projects and miss out a whole room, and then they've sent off the estimate, they win the project and wonder why they didn't make any money on it. This will flag you before that point and enable you to either go back to the customer and say, hang on, we've made an honest mistake here, and we need to revise, and give you the opportunity to either pull out of the contract or you wear it. So I'm not going to get too much into drawing in Microvellum. I'm sure you guys have seen 1,000 demos on that, or if you haven't, then just get onto our website there and see, you know, all the different videos that we've recorded on 2D drawings and ViewBase and tools like that to see how you can quickly draw. But from that, now I've got that drawn out there. It's basically ready to come back in, and I could create another work order. I could modify the existing work order from that, or once I've created a new work order, I can go and check that against my saved other work order that I've got there with the proposal.
So Matt, when it comes to laying out a project like this, this was a nice example of how to quickly do that. But one of the things that we were going to touch on was another tool that that Hugh's been using. Are you there still, Hugh?
Yep.
Sweet. So you also have a Leica 3D DISTO laser. So how are you using that in this process? Are you using that to create these layouts, or, and how's it helping you?
So typically we will first price up the job, just similar to what Matt's done there. But then once we've won the project, we will then go out and we will scan basically everywhere that we're putting joinery, just to get all the walls and just the whole outline of where the units are going. And then that we'll just take that back and use that, just then create all our walls from that point. And we'll have the overlay of the scan over the top of our drawing, so we can see if there's going to be any, if any of the joinery is going to be clashing, or we need to pack joinery off the wall. Mm-hmm. But where it really comes in for us is if we've got, if we're working to curved walls or anything like that, it's just just brilliant. We this basically takes out all site work. We've just done a project just recently with floating shelves that go on this big curved wall, and all the work was basically just done in the factory, then taken out to site and just sat in place. There's no need to scribe or do anything really on site other than just fix it in.
Nice. And so that's a pretty native import there. That laser creates a DXF file that can be imported into, and you just overlay it right on top.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we can, like, on some projects, we'll do all our kick faces and infills, our fillers and everything on the CNC. So then once it goes out to site, it just fits in perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've just laid this part down into 2D here, Hugh. So Hugh was saying that they do some their fillers like this, and I know down in Victoria there's some pretty cranky old buildings around with some walls that are either old brickwork or out of plumb by a country mile, and Hugh was telling me that they're measuring those with the DISTO. Basically, the DISTO will then plot that polyline for you, which you can then just apply your tool to that line. So it might be your 9.5 comp at 18.5 mil deep to the right of that line. And then that would have probably been phase 6, but I'll just make that phase 6 so it's on the same side as my mortise route there. And then updating that part into the project, so you can see pretty quickly that part now has got that cut out of it. And it only took me a few seconds to do that, but you can imagine how long that would take your installer on site to plot that and make that. He would have to put that up against there, get his scriber block out, and then put his pencil down there. He's either going to start with a jigsaw or he's going to get his electric plane out. He's going to make a hell of a mess on site just to get that, to do that. And to do this so quickly in this software is, again, just an area where Hugh and Will are seeing a huge return on having a tool that helps them do that with the Leica DISTO 360, which is being that it creates a DXF or a DWG file directly from the unit, and being able to bring it in and utilize it in this sort of situation is just fantastic. For, you know, curved walls or whatever the situation, you can get the information into the drawing and just apply your tooling to it, and just save you a whole bunch of time, and it's accurate.
And also just we've basically just completely cut out our return, you know, having to go back out to site to check measure. That's basically just doesn't happen anymore. Where previously we'd be, you know, we've missed a point here, so we'll have to go back and get the tape out, or something just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
But now we've got all the information, and you know, we'll mark out all our, you know, you know, where the pipes are coming out, just where everything, basically anything that's on the wall, we will mark, so that then all cutouts can be done on the CNC for all the PowerPoints and everything. And also with the templates, we can send out the stone templates to site with the job all scribed to the wall. It's just a huge time saver.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's really cool to see technology benefiting and making things faster, and how we can, you know, having Microvellum as a tool can utilize that technology as well. So something from a completely different manufacturer or supplier, being Leica, that we can utilize their functionality and put it into Microvellum and save you guys time. So worth looking at if anybody's considering that sort of a thing. I know there's some new ones out from Leica. We don't think we've got Adam, our expert on that from Microvellum, on this meeting, but there are some new tools out from Leica as well on that. There is a brand new DISTO out, but definitely worth having, especially after seeing what Hugh and Will have been doing with that tool. It's really cool to see. So yeah, good job. Well, that's about all I've got to show there, Clay, unless you can think of anything else you want me to demonstrate, or if Hugh or Will have got something that they'd like to ask me and get me to show them, I'm more than happy.
No, I think you did a good job there, just kind of showing those areas that we wanted to focus in on. There was some questions about some people wanting to see some time studies, and so I made the comment there. If you want to get a poll like that or make a question like that to our community, you can go to community.microvellum.com. It's a free site, open site. If you haven't registered for it, go ahead and register for it, and you can ask your question there to our community, and you can get some answers from others that are using this tool. So yeah, definitely something to consider.
Yeah, and so on that, Clay, I would recommend anybody in their business to get out there on the factory floor and spend a few days going around with the stopwatches and trying to get a handle on where the time is being spent. You'll find that when you do that and you're out on the factory floor with your guys, they probably will speed up a little bit, but at least from that you can go and build your time into those activity stations quite easily. So just focus on one area at a time and dial it in, and then just reflect that. You'll be able to reflect that in any, in the next project you do, and through your estimate, and then see how long it actually took. If you're using time clocks or anything like that, or any other software around that, then that's always handy. But you can just do it manually. It's just a matter of really knowing your times on the factory floor, and that comes down to just checking each activity that you're doing and how long it's taking you. It's never going to be perfect. It is estimating. That's why it's called estimating. But as long as you're allowing the correct amount and you've got your margin built into that, you should be pretty right and win hopefully 8 out of 10. If there's a difficulty factor, as Hugh said, you can always build that in. With the new functionality that we'll be having in the next month or so, being able to just add a piece of hardware on the fly and give that a name, call it additional labor if you like, and then just chunk chuck a whole bunch of time at it. So you can see that here's a chunk of time I'm just going to add to this project for difficulty factor. You could also have a hardware item in your library called difficulty factor and put it into every project and then go and edit that. But you can also just add it on the fly. So that is where you can get around that. If you are having to do some pretty custom stuff that you've never done before, you know it's going to take more time, and you don't want to build it into the activity stations, you can just allow for it in the hardware part. Yeah, so that's about all I've got to add on that, Clay.
Okay, well, great. I did have one final question for you. And it may seem like an odd one for me to ask, but now that you've gained the knowledge of, you know, how to use the software, you have your workflows down, you have your CNC, your team is trained. If you were to look back on the day that you woke up and realized that you needed to make a change, you wanted to get beyond that wall that you talked about, what would you do different? Would you change anything?
Probably not, to tell you the truth. Like I think, you know, the way that we got the software before we jumped straight into the CNC, I think that was a big win for us. But no, I think the way we went about it was good. I think if anything, I probably would have just got Microvellum a lot earlier. I think that's probably I think software is just one of the most important things. That's probably my only regret, that I didn't get onto Microvellum a lot earlier.
Right. Okay, well, good. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here and to talk about your story and your transformation that you've had over the last year or so. I think you've definitely accomplished a lot, and you've got a lot of new technology, and that I think you're on a good path for some more continued growth. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks a lot for having us.
All right, if you want to learn more about how Microvellum can help you grow your business, how we can help you move beyond your current limitations, let us know by participating there in that poll we just launched. If you want to be contacted, just let us know and we will reach out to you. As Matt showed you, if you want to reach out to your account manager to learn more about some of the things that you saw today, you can find their contact information by going to the Toolbox drop-down menu for the Help menu and going to About Microvellum, and you will see the contact information there. So definitely reach out to them if you want to learn more about how some of these features that you saw today will help you. All right, so do you need a little help when it comes to creating custom products? I think we all can use a refresher sometimes to put us on the right path. Well, it's not next week, but it's the following Wednesday, so July 8th, we'll be having another live session that will cover this topic of engineering parametric products from scratch. So Tim Skolman, an account manager up in Toronto, will actually be helping us with this information. He's going to give us some pointers and show us how to build a parametric shelf product that uses a hover bracket system. So something to watch out there for if you need some some pointers or to refresh yourself with how to build a custom parametric product. So once again, we appreciate you guys taking the time to join us here. Hopefully you learned something new, something that you can use to continue to help you streamline the way you work. So we'll catch you again soon for another Microvellum live session.